Welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Robert Keller wiped the grease from his calloused hands, satisfaction evident in his stern features as he examined the restored engine before him. The clock on his workshop wall read 7:30 p.m., another long day at Keller's Auto Repair, but the extra hours meant more savings toward Andrea's dream gallery. At 38, Robert had built his life through unwavering determination and hard work. The repair shop, a testament to his mentor Frank's faith in him, wasn't just a business, it was his legacy. The familiar scent of motor oil and metal filled his nostrils as he moved through the workshop, checking each station with meticulous attention. "Dad, I finished organizing the tool cabinet like you showed me," Kevin called out from the corner of the shop. Robert turned to see his 16-year-old son, his hands dirty, but his expensive camera safely stored in its bag on the high shelf. "Let me take a look," Robert said, his voice carrying the natural authority that made even his most experienced mechanics snap to attention. He examined Kevin's work, noting the precise arrangement of wrenches and sockets. "Good job. You're learning fast." Kevin beamed at the rare praise. "Thanks, Dad. I was thinking maybe I could photograph some of the restored classics for the shop's website. It could help attract more customers." Robert considered the suggestion, his face maintaining its usual stoic expression. "Show me some test shots first. Everything that represents this shop has to meet our standards." His standards, perfection, was the minimum acceptable level. The phone rang, and Robert's expression tightened as he recognized the number. "Andrea," he answered, his voice softening slightly for his wife of 12 years. "Robert, honey, I'll be home late tonight. The Art Appreciation Society meeting is running longer than expected. We're discussing some exciting new techniques I want to try in my next series." "Another late meeting?" Robert's jaw clenched slightly. "That's the third this month. You know how important this is for my development as an artist. Besides, you're always working late at the shop." Andrea's voice carried a hint of defensive irritation. "I work late to keep this family secure," Robert replied, his tone measured but firm. "Make sure you're home for dinner tomorrow. Your brothers are coming over." After hanging up, Robert turned to find Kevin staring at him with an unreadable expression. "Your mother's passionate about her art," he explained, though something in his son's eyes made him pause. "Let's close up and grab some dinner." The drive home in Robert's black Ford pickup was quiet, both men lost in their thoughts. Their modest house in Portland's working-class district was dark when they arrived. Robert prepared a simple dinner, while Kevin disappeared upstairs with his camera. Later that evening, as Robert sat in his study reviewing the shop's accounts, his mind wandered to the early days of his relationship with Andrea. He'd been immediately drawn to her fiery spirit and creativity, so different from his own nature. Her large Italian-American family had initially been skeptical of the serious, intense mechanic pursuing their beloved daughter, but his unwavering dedication had won them over. The sound of footsteps pulled him from his thoughts. Kevin stood in the doorway, fidgeting with his camera strap. "Something on your mind, son?" Robert asked, noting the unusual tension in Kevin's shoulders. "Just thinking about Mom's Art Society meetings," Kevin mumbled, not meeting his father's eyes. "Do you know who all attends?" Robert leaned back in his chair, studying his son's face. "Your Uncle Tony introduced her to the group." "Why?" "No reason," Kevin replied too quickly. "Just curious." "Good night, Dad." Robert watched his son retreat, a familiar unease settling in his gut. He'd built his life on reading people and machines, finding the problems others missed, identifying the signs of trouble before they became catastrophic failures. Something in Kevin's behavior set off warning bells in his mind. The next day brought Tony and Vincent, Andrea's brothers, for their weekly dinner. Robert observed as Andrea fluttered around the kitchen, preparing her family's traditional recipes with practiced ease. "Business good at the shop, Robert?" Tony asked, helping himself to another serving of pasta. "Steady," Robert replied, noting how Andrea's movements stiffened slightly at the mention of work. "Though we've had some unexpected cancellations lately." Vincent raised an eyebrow. "Cancellations? That's not like your shop." You've always had more work than you could handle. Things change, Robert said neutrally, his eyes fixed on Andrea's back as she unnecessarily rearranged items in the kitchen cabinet. Kevin remained unusually quiet throughout dinner, picking at his food and frequently checking his phone. Robert caught him watching his mother with an intensity that seemed out of place. After Andrea's brothers left, Robert found Kevin in the garage, organizing his photography equipment with the same precision he'd learned working on cars. "Want to tell me what's really bothering you?" Robert asked, closing the garage door behind him. Kevin's hands stilled on his camera. "Not yet, Dad. I need to be sure first." Robert nodded, respecting his son's judgment. He'd raised Kevin to be thorough, to verify before acting. "Whatever it is, we handle it as a family." "What if?" Kevin hesitated, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if what you find changes everything about our family?" Robert placed a heavy hand on his son's shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. "Then we handle that too, no matter what." His voice carried the weight of absolute certainty, the same tone he used when declaring a car beyond repair or guaranteeing his work to a customer. That night, Robert lay awake in bed, listening to Andrea's steady breathing beside him. 15 years of working with machines had taught him to trust his instincts. Something was wrong, and both his son and his wife were at the center of it. He thought about his friend group, the men who'd stood beside him at his wedding. Peter Walsh, always ready with a joke and a helping hand. Daniel Torres, whose diner had been their regular hangout since high school. Scott Matthews, who'd helped them find their first house. And Bill Parker, the most recent addition to their circle, who'd quickly become Andrea's strongest advocate in their group. Robert's mind cataloged recent changes. Andrea's increasingly frequent evening commitments, the subtle shift in his friend's behavior around him, the unexpected decline in business at the shop. Like pieces of an engine laying on his workbench, he could sense these elements were connected, but the final picture remained just out of reach. His phone buzzed with a text from Peter. "Drinks tomorrow?" The usual crew. Robert typed back a simple yes, his decision already made. Whatever was happening, he would face it with the same determination that had defined his life. If someone was threatening what he'd built, they would learn why even Andrea's brothers had come to respect his capacity for absolute resolution. The bedroom door creaked slightly, and Robert caught a glimpse of Kevin in the hallway, camera in hand, his face set in grim determination. Father and son exchanged a look of silent understanding. Whatever storm was coming, they would weather it together. Robert closed his eyes, his mind already formulating contingency plans. He hadn't spent 20 years building his life to let anyone threaten it now. If his instincts were right, and they usually were, someone was about to learn the cost of betraying Robert Keller's trust. Kevin Keller adjusted his camera's zoom lens, his hands steady despite the emotional turmoil churning inside him. The warm afternoon sun did nothing to dispel the chill that had settled in his bones as he watched his mother's red Volkswagen Beetle pull into the parking lot of the Sunset Motel. He'd been practicing urban photography in downtown Portland, capturing the contrast between old architecture and modern developments, when he'd spotted the distinctive vehicle. His mother's car was impossible to miss. She'd hand-painted intricate flowers along its sides, turning it into what she called a mobile art piece. Through his viewfinder, Kevin observed as Andrea emerged from the car, checking her reflection in the window. She wore one of her painting shirts, spattered with colorful stains, her usual costume for art society meetings. But something about her furtive glances around the parking lot set off alarm bells in Kevin's mind. The next figure to emerge from the motel stopped Kevin's breath entirely. Bill Parker, his father's friend of 5 years, walked directly to Andrea's car. Kevin's finger instinctively pressed the shutter button, capturing the moment Bill's hands found Andrea's waist, the intimate gesture unmistakable in its meaning. "No, no, no," Kevin muttered, his photographer's eye continuing to document even as his mind reeled. He circled the motel's perimeter, keeping his distance while searching for better angles. That's when he spotted them. Peter's distinctive red truck with the dented fender, partially hidden behind the building, and Scott's sleek motorcycle concealed near the dumpster. Kevin's hands trembled as he switched to his telephoto lens, capturing damning image after damning image. His mother's Art Appreciation Society was appreciating something, but it wasn't art. Hey kid, a gruff voice called out, making Kevin nearly drop his camera. He turned to find a motel maintenance worker watching him suspiciously. This is private property. Sorry, sir, Kevin replied, forcing his voice to remain steady. I'm doing a photo essay on local architecture for school. Just finished anyway. He walked away quickly, his mind racing. The weight of his camera felt like lead around his neck, its memory card now holding images that could destroy his family. But it was the flash of something else he'd seen that truly chilled him. A stack of papers Bill had been carrying, bearing the familiar logo of his father's shop. Over the next week, Kevin became a shadow, his camera his constant companion. He followed his mother's carefully crafted schedule of art meetings and gallery research, documenting a web of betrayal that grew more complex with each passing day. At Daniel's diner, he photographed his mother in deep conversation with Peter and Scott, their heads bent together over documents. Through the diner's windows, he caught Daniel repeatedly checking his phone, his worried expression visible even from Kevin's hiding spot across the street. Hey, Kevin, Daniel's wife Maria called out one afternoon, nearly making him jump out of his skin. Taking pictures for the school paper? Kevin forced a smile, grateful for the cover story he'd established. Yeah, doing a piece on local businesses. The diner's lighting is perfect right now. Maria's kind face creased with concern. You look tired, honey. Everything okay at home? Just busy with projects, Kevin replied, unable to meet her eyes. He'd always liked Maria, with her warm personality and the way she slipped him extra fries. Now he wondered if she knew, if she suspected what her husband was involved in. The most difficult moments came at home, watching his father work late into the night, unaware of the conspiracy forming around him. Robert's dedication to his business and family had always inspired Kevin. Now it made his heart ache. One evening, Kevin overheard a phone conversation between his mother and Bill that made his blood run cold. The rumors are working. Andrea's voice drifted from her studio. Roberts noticed the drop in customers. He's worried about the business. Perfect, Bill replied, his voice tinny through the speaker. A few more months of this, and he'll be ready to sell. The property values in that area are skyrocketing. The shop's land alone is worth a fortune. And once he sells, Andrea continued, her voice taking on a dreamy quality Kevin had once associated with her passion for art, we'll have the capital for the gallery. I've already found the perfect building. You're sure he won't suspect anything? Bill asked. Robert's not exactly known for taking things lying down. Andrea's laugh sent chills down Kevin's spine. Please. He thinks I'm spending my evenings with a bunch of middle-aged women discussing brush techniques. Besides, he's so focused on that stupid shop, he doesn't see what's right in front of him. Kevin's camera captured her expression through the studio window. Calculating, confident, completely at odds with the loving mother he thought he knew. As he reviewed the photos later, he noticed details he'd missed in person. The wedding ring absent from her finger, the business cards for real estate agents scattered across her desk, the familiar handwriting of his father's friends on documents they had no business possessing. The final piece fell into place when Kevin followed Scott Matthews to a meeting with potential buyers for his father's shop property, a meeting that took place weeks before anyone had even suggested selling the business. The photographs showed Scott gesturing enthusiastically, pointing out features of the building and lot, while Andrea stood in the background, nodding approvingly. That night, Kevin sat in his room, surrounded by hundreds of photographs spread across his bed. Each image told part of a story of betrayal, so complete it took his breath away. His mother and his father's closest friends had created an elaborate web of deception, using their intimate knowledge of Robert's life to systematically dismantle everything he'd built. The sound of his father's truck pulling into the driveway made Kevin's decision for him. He gathered the most damning photographs into a folder, each one carefully selected to tell the story in undeniable detail. His hands shook as he heard Robert's heavy footsteps on the stairs. Dad, Kevin called out, his voice cracking slightly. I need to show you something. Robert appeared in the doorway, his face showing concern at his son's obvious distress. What is it, Kevin? Sit down, Dad, Kevin said, gripping the folder tightly. Everything's about to change. Robert Keller sat motionless in his son's room, his massive hands gripping the folder of photographs with enough force to crumple the edges. Each image hit him like a physical blow, yet his face remained eerily calm, a stillness that Kevin knew from experience preceded his father's most dangerous moments. "Tell me everything," Robert commanded, his voice carrying the same quiet authority he used when diagnosing a particularly complex mechanical problem. "Start from the beginning. Leave nothing out." Kevin recounted his discoveries chronologically, his own voice growing stronger as he watched his father's reaction. He detailed the weekly meetings at the Sunset Motel, the whispered conversations at Daniel's Diner, the secret real estate viewings with Scott. "The business problems," Robert interrupted, his voice like steel grinding against stone. "Explain." Kevin pulled out a series of photographs showing Peter Walsh talking to regular customers in various locations around town. They've been spreading rumors about poor work quality, suggesting people take their business elsewhere. That's why Thompson Auto across town suddenly has so many new customers. Robert's jaw clenched, a muscle twitching beneath the skin. "Continue." The next hour passed as Kevin revealed the full scope of the betrayal. He showed his father images of Andrea meeting with real estate agents, documents proving Bill Parker had been researching property values in the area for months, evidence of Daniel Torres helping to finance Andrea's gallery plans with money skimmed from his diner. "Your mother," Robert said finally, his voice dangerously quiet. "How long?" "The affair started just after the wedding," Kevin replied, forcing himself to meet his father's intense gaze. "She chose your groomsmen carefully, Dad. Bill was the last addition. She made sure he was hired at the Parks Department 3 years ago to complete her circle." Robert stood abruptly, his full height making the bedroom feel suddenly smaller. He moved to Kevin's window, staring out at the neighborhood he'd worked so hard to make their home. "The gallery money," he said, his back to his son. "The extra shifts I worked, the loans I took out. She's been funneling it to a separate account," Kevin confirmed, pulling out bank statements he'd photographed in Andrea's studio. "Bill's been helping her manage it. They're planning to open the gallery together after they convince me to sell my shop," Robert finished, his voice devoid of emotion. "After they destroy everything I built, they expect me to finance their future with the proceeds." Kevin watched his father carefully, recognizing the dangerous calm that had descended over him. He'd seen this state before, when a drunk driver had nearly hit Kevin outside the shop, when a rival mechanic had tried to sabotage their equipment. It was the calm that preceded calculated, devastating action. "You did well," Robert said finally, turning to face his son. "Documenting everything, gathering evidence, making sure before coming to me. You understand what happens next? We're going to destroy them," Kevin stated with certainty. A slight smile crossed Robert's face. Not one of joy, but of grim determination. "Yes, we are. But first, we need to protect what's ours." He picked up his phone, checking the time. "Your mother's at another meeting. Come with me." They drove to Robert's lawyer's office in silence, the folder of evidence secure in Robert's grip. The night air hummed with tension as they pulled into the empty parking lot where a single office light remained on, waiting for them. Inside, Robert's longtime attorney James Morrison reviewed the photographs with professional detachment, occasionally making notes in his leather-bound portfolio. His weathered face betrayed no emotion as he examined proof of his client's systematic betrayal. "We need to move quickly," Morrison stated, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "I assume you want to protect the business first?" Robert nodded, his face set in stone. "Transfer full ownership to Kevin, with my parents as trustees until he's 18. I want it ironclad. Nothing Andrea or her conspirators can touch." Kevin watched as the lawyer drafted documents, his father's signature bold and unwavering on each page. The clock ticked past midnight as they secured their defensive position, Morrison occasionally offering quiet advice about asset protection and legal strategy. "Dad," Kevin spoke up during a lull. "What about the house? Mom's studio?" Robert's eyes hardened. "The house stays in my name. Her studio?" A dangerous smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Let her keep painting for now. Every brushstroke is just more evidence of her betrayal." The drive home was interrupted by a call from Andrea. Robert put it on speaker, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Honey, I'm staying at Sarah's tonight." Andrea's voice filled the car, the lie flowing effortlessly. We lost track of time discussing technique, and it's so late. Of course, Robert replied, his voice perfectly controlled. Take all the time you need with your art friends. After hanging up, Kevin pulled out his camera, showing his father the fresh photos of Andrea entering the Sunset Motel with Bill barely an hour ago. Robert's only response was a slight tightening of his jaw. They arrived home to find messages from several of the conspirators on Robert's phone. Routine texts maintaining their facade of friendship. Peter asking about weekend plans, Scott sharing a funny meme, Daniel inviting them to try his new menu items. How can they act so normal? Kevin wondered aloud, disgust evident in his voice. Robert's response was measured, each word carefully chosen. Because they think they're smarter than me. They see the mechanic who fixes their cars, the friend who works overtime to support his wife's dreams. They don't see the man who built something from nothing, who survived growing up in foster homes, who earned every callus on his hand through sheer determination. He turned to his son, his eyes glinting with controlled fury. They chose their role in this story. Now we'll show them exactly what kind of man they betrayed. Late into the night, father and son sat at the kitchen table, their phones switched off, the house silent except for the occasional sound of papers being shifted. They reviewed every photograph, every document, every piece of evidence Kevin had gathered. The business first, Robert muttered, more to himself than to Kevin. Then their reputations, their marriages, their dreams. He looked up at his son. You understand there's no going back from this? Once we start, we don't stop until they've lost everything they valued. Kevin met his father's gaze steadily. They didn't just betray you, Dad. They betrayed our whole family. They used your friendship, your trust, your hard work, all while laughing behind your back. They deserve everything that's coming. Robert nodded, pride mixing with the anger in his expression. Tomorrow, we start gathering allies. There are others they've hurt, others who'll want justice. He stood, his massive frame casting a shadow across the table. Get some sleep. We have work to do. As Kevin headed upstairs, he paused at the sight of his father, standing in the doorway of Andrea's studio, studying her latest paintings with an unreadable expression. Dad, he called softly. Robert turned, his face set with grim determination. Your mother always said art should evoke emotion, make people feel something deep in their souls. His hand traced the edge of a canvas without touching it. We're going to help her create her masterpiece, the perfect illustration of consequences. Kevin nodded, understanding the depths of pain and fury beneath his father's controlled exterior. As he prepared for bed, he could hear Robert in his study, making calls to set their plans in motion. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of their calculated response, the first moves in a game their enemies didn't even know they were playing. The betrayers had spent years building their web of deception, thinking themselves clever and safe. They were about to learn that they had underestimated both the strength of the man they'd betrayed and the loyalty of the son who had exposed their schemes. The coming storm would sweep away their comfortable lies, leaving nothing but the harsh truth of their choices in its wake. The morning after their late-night meeting with the lawyer, Robert Keller sat at his kitchen table, cleaning his antique Colt revolver, a ritual that had always helped him think. The weapon, like everything else he owned, was meticulously maintained. Kevin watched from the doorway, understanding that his father's measured movements masked a calculating mind at work. Your mother called, Robert said without looking up. She's coming home this afternoon. Says she has exciting news about a potential gallery space. Kevin placed a fresh stack of photographs on the table. Bill's been busy. He showed her the Wellington building yesterday. They're planning to use my college fund as part of the down payment. Robert's hands never paused. Call Maria Torres. Tell her I need to meet with her. Alone. An hour later, Robert sat across from Daniel Torres's wife in a coffee shop far from her husband's diner. Maria's sharp features and pressed suit spoke of her years as a paralegal before marriage had redirected her ambitions. I wondered when you'd contact me, Maria said, sliding a thick manila envelope across the table. I've been gathering my own evidence for 3 years. Robert examined the contents, bank statements, surveillance photos, handwritten notes detailing Daniel's suspicious absences. How much has he stolen from the diner? Nearly $200,000, Maria replied, her voice tight with controlled anger. I tracked every penny. He thinks I'm too busy with the books to notice his creative accounting. Andrea's gallery dreams aren't cheap, and your wife has expensive taste in conspirators. Robert's expression remained unchanged as he reviewed the documentation. Why didn't you come forward sooner? My children, Maria answered simply. I needed proof that would hold up in court. But now, she pulled out more papers. I have everything we need to take control of the diner in a divorce. Daniel was sloppy, kept all the receipts from their little meetings, probably for tax purposes. Idiot. Robert nodded, appreciating her approach. I need access to their meeting records. Dates, times, who was present. Already done? Maria tapped the envelope. I've been tracking their patterns for months. They're creatures of habit. Same motel, same meeting schedule. Even booked the same rooms. What do you want in return? Maria's eyes hardened. I want my diner. I want my children to see their father for what he is. And I want Andrea to learn what happens when you try to destroy someone's family. Robert extended his hand. We have a deal? The next piece fell into place that afternoon when Lisa Matthews, Scott's daughter from his first marriage, arrived at the auto shop. The 20-year-old's resemblance to her father stopped at the surface. Where Scott was smooth charm, Lisa radiated cold fury. Dad thinks he's so clever, Lisa said, handing over a USB drive. Working at the motel gives me access to everything. Security footage, guest records, credit card transactions. They didn't even bother using fake names half the time. Kevin, working nearby, paused to listen as Lisa detailed years of observed betrayal. Her father's abandonment of her mother had left scars that time hadn't healed. Why help us? Robert asked directly. Lisa's laugh was bitter. Because Dad's doing to you what he did to us. Convincing a friend to sell their business, promising to help manage the proceeds, then making it all disappear. It's his specialty. Ask my mom about the bakery she lost. Robert's network grew throughout the day. Eleanor, Frank's widow, arrived with a trembling hand but steel in her spine. At 75, she remembered every detail of Andrea's attempts to manipulate Frank into selling years ago. She came to the house, Eleanor recalled, her voice strong despite her age, bringing meals when Frank was sick, offering to help with paperwork. Then the suggestions started, how the property was too much work for an old man, how selling could fund his retirement. Frank saw right through her. Robert's jaw tightened. Why didn't Frank tell me? He wanted to give you a chance at happiness, Eleanor replied. Said every man deserves to make his own choices. But he left me instructions. If Andrea ever tried again, I was to give you these. She produced a set of letters, documents, and recordings. Frank, ever meticulous, had documented every interaction, every attempted manipulation. Even after death, his mentor was protecting him. By evening, Robert had assembled a war council in his garage. Maria with her financial evidence, Lisa with her surveillance footage, Eleanor with her historical documentation. Each woman brought a piece of the puzzle, their combined knowledge forming a devastating arsenal. Andrea's gallery dreams make her vulnerable, Maria observed, spreading blueprints of the Wellington building across Robert's workbench. She's been focusing all her energy there, getting sloppy with covering her tracks. Bill's been handling the real estate arrangements, Lisa added. He's been meeting with investors, making promises he can't keep without your shop sale proceeds. Robert absorbed every detail, his mind assembling the pieces into a plan. They built their betrayal on careful manipulation, he said finally. We'll destroy them with absolute truth. Kevin, prepare your photos. Maria, get your financial records in order. Lisa, compile the surveillance footage. Eleanor, have your documents ready. He stood his massive frame towering over the workbench. Tomorrow, we start dismantling everything they've built. No warnings, no threats, no negotiations. They chose their path. Now they'll walk it to the end. Robert's first move targeted the foundation of Andrea's carefully constructed facade. Monday morning found him in the office of Principal Catherine Shun, laying out evidence of Andrea's misuse of school resources and time. Mrs. Keller has been conducting personal business during class hours, Robert explained, his tone professional as he presented documented proof. Using school computers to research properties, meeting with real estate agents during her planning periods, neglecting her teaching duties to pursue her gallery ambitions. Principal Chin reviewed the evidence with growing concern. These meetings with Mr. Parker during school hours. Bill Parker is not just a parent of one of her students, Robert continued, sliding forward more photographs. Their relationship extends beyond professional boundaries. The formal reprimand was issued before lunch. By afternoon, anonymous tips had reached the school board, raising questions about Andrea's commitment to education. Robert watched from his truck as she emerged from an emergency meeting, her confident stride faltering for the first time. Peter Walsh's downfall began with a series of precise phone calls to his construction union. Robert's evidence was damning. Photographs of Peter's unauthorized absences from job sites, timestamped to match his motel meetings with Andrea. Mr. Walsh's pattern of behavior raises serious concerns, Robert told the union representative, his voice carrying the authority of someone who understood hard work and responsibility. These absences occurred during critical safety inspections. His neglect put other workers at risk. The union's disciplinary action was swift. Peter's attempts to explain his absences only dug him deeper as his lies unraveled under scrutiny. Scott Matthews proved more challenging, but Robert had anticipated his slippery nature. A careful audit of his real estate listings revealed multiple irregularities, properties marketed without proper authorization, hidden relationships with buyers, commissions allocated through questionable channels. Your husband's professional conduct requires immediate review, Robert informed Scott's broker, presenting Lisa's carefully compiled evidence. These transactions involve significant ethical violations. The real estate board's investigation struck at the heart of Scott's operation. His license suspension was just the beginning. Each questionable deal invited further scrutiny, each revealed violation adding to his professional destruction. But Robert's masterstroke targeted Andrea's gallery dreams directly. Through Maria's legal connections, he learned the Wellington building's owner faced mounting tax problems. A series of carefully structured offers, made through shell companies, secured the property for a fraction of its value. The city's youth arts program lacks a permanent home, Robert told the Parks Department board, Bill Parker notably absent from the meeting. I'd like to donate this building for their use, ensuring future generations have access to affordable art education. The press coverage was immediate and positive. Robert, the successful local businessman supporting community arts, became the face of a feel-good story. The irony of using Andrea's dream building to support young artists wasn't lost on those who knew the truth. Bill's desperate attempt to salvage the gallery plans revealed the cracks in the conspirators' alliance. Robert watched through Kevin's camera lens as Bill confronted Scott outside the Sunset Motel. "You promised me those property assessments were solid," Bill shouted, his composure cracking. "Now I have investors breathing down my neck." Scott's response was predictably self-serving. "Don't blame me for your mismanaged deals." If Peter hadn't drawn attention with his careless behavior, the accusations flew as their carefully maintained facade crumbled. Daniel, facing scrutiny over his diner's finances, turned on his co-conspirators. Peter, suspended from work, demanded compensation for his lost wages. Each betrayer sought to save themselves at the expense of the others. Robert orchestrated their destruction with the same precision he'd once used to rebuild engines. Each move was calculated, each consequence anticipated. He watched through Kevin's photographs as their confident smiles disappeared, replaced by worried frowns and suspicious glares. Andrea remained unaware of the noose tightening around her dreams. She continued planning her gallery, oblivious to the systematic dismantling of her support network. Robert allowed her this illusion, knowing the complete devastation would be more effective than gradual revelation. "The architects are ready to start renovations," she announced over dinner one evening, her eyes bright with manufactured enthusiasm. "Once you sell the shop, we'll have everything we need to make the gallery a reality." Robert met her gaze steadily. "The shop's future is secure," he replied, watching her expression falter slightly. "Some things aren't for sale." Later that night, as Kevin reviewed his latest surveillance photos, Robert prepared for the final phase of their response. "Your mother's family needs to know the truth," he told his son. All of it, Kevin nodded, understanding the weight of what would come next. I prepared a special portfolio for them. Every betrayal, every lie, every secret meeting, documented and dated. Robert studied the collection of evidence they'd amassed: Maria's financial records, Lisa's surveillance footage, Eleanor's historical documentation, Kevin's photographs, and the mountain of proof they'd gathered during their campaign of destruction. Tomorrow, he said, his voice carrying the finality of a judge's gavel, we show her brothers exactly who their sister really is. The Russo family dinner was a monthly tradition Andrea's brothers had maintained since their father's passing. Tony and Vincent Russo, proud inheritors of their father's construction business, had always treated Robert as blood. Their belief in family loyalty made the revelation of Andrea's betrayal even more devastating. Robert arrived at Tony's house with Kevin and their evidence. The brothers' wives and children were conspicuously absent. This would be a family matter in the oldest sense. Robert, Tony greeted him warmly, then noted his expression. What's wrong? Vincent, always more perceptive, studied the folder in Robert's hands. You've got something to tell us? Robert placed Kevin's portfolio on the dining room table. Your sister isn't who you think she is. The next 2 hours destroyed decades of family trust. Tony and Vincent reviewed the evidence in rigid silence, their faces darkening with each revealed betrayal. Kevin's photographs told an undeniable story: their beloved sister using and discarding people. The affair started right after the wedding, Robert explained, his voice steady. She chose my groomsmen carefully, manipulated them into helping destroy my business, all to fund her gallery dreams. Vincent's fists slammed into the table. We vouch for you to Papa, he said, his words directed at Andrea's smiling face in an old family photo. Told him you'd found a good man, someone worthy of our family's trust. Tony stood abruptly, pacing the room with barely contained fury. The business sabotage. That's why you lost the Martinez contract? The Rodriguez repairs? Robert nodded. They've been spreading rumors, steering customers away, using their knowledge of the business to target our reputation. She used us, Vincent realized, his voice hollow. Those referrals she asked for, the clients she wanted us to send to her friends. We were helping her destroy you. The brothers' reaction validated Robert's assessment of their character. Their loyalty, once given to their sister, transferred fully to the man she'd betrayed. Family meant everything to the Russos, and Andrea had violated its most sacred tenets. Mama needs to know, Tony declared, though his voice cracked at the thought. She deserves to hear it from family. The drive to the Russo matriarch's home was silent. Maria Russo, family cornerstone and keeper of traditions, opened her door to find her sons, son-in-law, and grandson bearing the weight of terrible truth. Kevin's portfolio told the story again. Maria Russo's proud stance crumbled as she witnessed her daughter's true nature revealed through countless photographs and documents. Her collapse wasn't theatrical. It was the quiet devastation of a mother seeing her child's complete moral failure. All these years, she whispered in Italian, clutching her rosary. All the Sunday dinners, the family prayers, the values we taught her. For what? To become this? Andrea's attempts to spin the situation came later that week. She arrived at her mother's house unannounced, armed with excuses and justifications. Instead of her expected allies, she found her brothers waiting with Robert and Kevin, trying to get ahead of the story. Sisters? Vincent's voice carried generations of disappointment. Like you got ahead of Robert's business problems that you created? Andrea's practiced explanations withered under her family's unified rejection. When she turned to her mother for support, she found only judgment in those familiar eyes. Mama, please, she pleaded. They don't understand about the gallery, about my dreams. Dreams? Maria Russo's voice could have frozen flame. I dreamed of raising a daughter who understood family, loyalty, love. Instead, I raised a serpent who poisoned her own nest. Kevin's camera captured it all, his mother's masks cracking, her manipulations failing, her family turning away one by one. The betrayer found herself betrayed by the very bonds she'd taken for granted. The support network formed organically after that. Maria Torres reached out to Lisa Matthews, sharing strategies for documenting betrayal. Scott's first wife connected with Peter's wife, comparing stories of suspected infidelity and manipulation. Eleanor provided wisdom and perspective, her years of observing Andrea's schemes helping the others understand their shared experience. Robert watched it all through Kevin's lens, noting how the conspirators' wives found strength in unity while their husbands turned on each other. The betrayer's carefully constructed world was collapsing, each piece falling exactly as he'd planned. "They're starting to understand," he told Kevin as they reviewed the latest surveillance photos. "Every dream they built on betrayal, every plan they made at my expense, it's all turning to ash." Kevin studied a particularly striking image. Andrea standing alone outside her mother's house, the Russo family united behind closed doors. What happens when they have nothing left to lose? Robert's smile was terrifying in its certainty. That's when we show them exactly how much more they can lose. Andrea's red Volkswagen Beetle pulled into the driveway at 7:15 p.m. The house stood dark except for a faint glow emanating from the garage. She grabbed her portfolio case, filled with new gallery plans and architectural drawings, her latest attempt to convince Robert about selling the shop. The garage door opened with its familiar mechanical whir. Andrea stepped inside, then froze. Every painting she'd ever created lined the walls and covered the workbenches. Her entire artistic journey surrounded her, from her earliest student works to her most recent pieces. Robert and Kevin stood in the center of the garage. Kevin's camera was mounted on a tripod, its red recording light blinking steadily. Robert held her favorite brush in his massive hands, the one he'd bought her for their 5th anniversary. "Robert?" Andrea's voice wavered. "What's going on?" "You always said art should reveal truth," Robert replied, his voice carrying the same calm precision he used when diagnosing engine problems. "Tonight, we're going to create your masterpiece." He snapped the brush in half with a sharp crack that made Andrea flinch. 15 years of marriage. 12 years of friendship with men I trusted. All of it sacrificed for your art. "You don't understand," Andrea protested, reaching for a nearby canvas. "The gallery is our future, our chance at something better." Robert's laugh held no warmth. "Our future? Or your future with Bill?" He picked up one of her larger paintings, an abstract piece she'd spent months perfecting. "You chose your art over our marriage." The canvas split under his hands. Over Kevin's stability, another painting fell victim to his destruction. Over the trust of everyone who loved you. Andrea lunged forward, trying to save her work, but Kevin blocked her path. His camera captured every moment of her desperate attempts to protect her creations. "Kevin, please," she begged. "These are my life's work." "Like the shop is Dad's life's work?" Kevin's voice carried a steel edge that matched his father's. "The one you and your lovers tried to steal?" Robert continued his systematic destruction. "Watch," he commanded as another canvas tore. "Watch your dreams burn like you burned our family." Andrea's screams echoed off the garage walls as decades of artistic expression crumbled before her. She tried bargaining, threatening, pleading, each strategy falling as flat as the shredded canvases at her feet. "I can explain everything," she attempted, her composure cracking. "The gallery would have benefited all of us. Bill and I had plans." "Bill won't be helping anyone anymore," Robert interrupted, destroying a particularly valuable piece she'd planned to display in her gallery. "His career at the parts department ended this morning. Seems the board frowns on employees using city property for illicit meetings." Kevin's camera documented every piece's destruction, every failed attempt at manipulation, every mask slipping from Andrea's face. The woman who had orchestrated their family's near destruction stood revealed in the harsh garage lighting. "You think destroying my art will fix anything?" Andrea's voice turned venomous. "You're still just a mechanic, a simple man who never understood ambition." Robert paused, holding her most recent work, a piece she'd spent 6 months creating. "You're right. I am a simple man. I believe in honest work, loyal friendship, and family trust." The painting crumbled in his grip. Simple values you sacrifice for your ambitions. As the last canvas fell, Andrea collapsed to her knees among the debris of her artistic dreams. Kevin's camera captured her breakdown in merciless detail, the same way she'd shown no mercy in orchestrating their family's destruction. "Your art meant everything to you," Robert said, his voice carrying absolute finality. "Now you have nothing." The fallout from that night spread through Portland's art community like wildfire. Robert's evidence, meticulously compiled over months, revealed a pattern of plagiarism in Andrea's work. Her original pieces were exposed as sophisticated copies of obscure European artists, her technique a carefully crafted facade of borrowed talent. The local art society rescinded her membership. Galleries that had shown interest in her work quietly withdrew their offers. Her reputation, built over years of networking and manipulation, crumbled under the weight of irrefutable proof. At Benjamin Franklin High School, Principal Chun called an emergency meeting with the Board of Education. The evidence of Andrea's affair with Bill Parker, a parent of one of her students, made her position untenable. "Mrs. Keller," Principal Chen's voice carried professional disappointment. "Your resignation is effective immediately. The board has agreed to keep certain details private, provided you leave without contest." Andrea's attempts to defend herself fell apart as more evidence emerged. Her use of class time for gallery planning, her inappropriate relationship with a parent, her misuse of school resources. Each revelation tightened the noose around her career. The groomsmen's reckonings came simultaneously. Daniel Torres arrived at his diner one morning to find the locks changed. Maria, armed with proof of his financial misconduct, had executed a flawless legal strategy. "The books don't lie, Daniel," Maria informed him through the locked door, her paralegal training evident in her precise documentation. $200,000. Every penny tracked, every transaction recorded. "The divorce papers are with your lawyer." Scott Matthews received notification of his permanent license revocation. The real estate board's investigation, fueled by Lisa's evidence, uncovered years of ethical violations. "Dad," Lisa told him as she cleared out her desk at the motel, "you taught me that actions have consequences. Consider this your lesson." Peter Walsh's union membership ended with a unanimous vote. His attempts to explain his absences only revealed more compromising information about his activities with Andrea. Bill Parker's downfall proved especially spectacular. Robert's evidence of his misuse of city property, combined with proof of his inappropriate relationship with a teacher at his daughter's school, made headlines in the local paper. The betrayers' marriages ended decisively. Maria's legal expertise empowered the other wives, showing them how to document everything, protect their interests, and emerge stronger from their divorces. Robert watched it all unfold through Kevin's lens, each photograph capturing another moment of justice served. The conspirators who had laughed at his trust now faced the consequences of their choices. Andrea made one final attempt to salvage her position at the school. She arrived at the board meeting armed with prepared statements and character witnesses. Instead, she found Robert waiting with proof of her plagiarism. "Your copies are skillful," he acknowledged, displaying side-by-side comparisons of her work with the originals. "But they're still just imitations. Like your marriage, like your loyalty, like your love." The evidence was irrefutable. Andrea's teaching career ended with her resignation, her dreams of artistic recognition shattered by proof of her deception. 1 year later, Keller's auto repair had expanded to twice its original size. The familiar scent of motor oil and metal now mingled with the clean smell of fresh paint from the newly renovated customer area. Kevin's photographs lined the walls, artistic shots of classic cars and precision machinery that brought a different kind of beauty to the practical space. Robert stood in his office, reviewing the shop's latest quarterly reports. Without the hidden sabotage, business had flourished. Their reputation for honest work and professional integrity attracted customers who appreciated the story of their resilience. Kevin entered, carrying his latest portfolio. At 17, he'd grown into his father's strength while developing his own artistic vision. His photography had gained recognition in local exhibitions, not for the dramatic expose of his mother's betrayal, but for his ability to find beauty in mechanical precision. "The Martinez family wants us to document their car's restoration," Kevin said, showing Robert his concept shots. "They said they chose us because they trust our work." Robert nodded, understanding the weight of that trust. The shop had become more than a business. It was a testament to their survival, their bond, their shared victory over betrayal. The bell above the door chimed. Maria Russo, Andrea's mother, stood in the entrance, holding a letter. Her face carried the weight of maternal disappointment. "Andrea asked me to give you this," she said, extending the envelope to Robert. "She's in therapy. Says she understands now what she destroyed." Robert accepted the letter without opening it. "And what do you think, Maria?" The elderly woman's eyes hardened. "I think my daughter forgot that real art comes from truth, not lies. She chose her ambitions over her family. Now she has neither." After she left, Robert and Kevin reviewed the security footage Lisa had compiled, their own insurance against future attempts at manipulation. The images showed Andrea's new life: a small apartment in Seattle, a receptionist job at a corporate office, solitary evenings far from the family she'd betrayed. "Dad," Kevin said, studying a particularly striking photo of their expanded shop, "do you ever regret how far we went?" Robert turned to his son, remembering the boy who'd brought him truth when others offered lies. The young man who'd helped document their journey from betrayal to triumph. Their shared ordeal had forged something unbreakable between them. "They taught us that sometimes the most important justice is the kind you create yourself," Robert replied, his voice carrying the certainty of a man who knew his own strength. "We didn't just survive their betrayal. We made sure they'd never forget the cost of their choices." Together, they walked through their thriving business. Kevin's photographs captured every angle of their success: the loyal customers, the pristine workspace, the awards for excellence that had replaced Andrea's paintings. The betrayers had lost everything: families, careers, reputations. But Robert and Kevin had gained something more valuable: unshakable trust in each other and the knowledge that true strength comes from facing betrayal with dignity and calculated resolve. As they closed the shop that evening, the setting sun painted their expanded building in shades of victory. They had emerged not just stronger, but wiser. Two men who understood that sometimes the most powerful response to betrayal is showing the betrayers exactly what they lost. The security system armed with a decisive click, protecting the legacy they defended and strengthened. Father and son walked to their trucks, leaving behind the ghosts of betrayal and carrying forward the bond that had turned vengeance into triumph. Epilogue: 5 years later. Kevin Keller adjusted his camera settings as he prepared to photograph the latest addition to their shop's classic car collection. At 21, he'd grown into a respected photographer, his work featured in automotive magazines and galleries alike. The irony wasn't lost on him. His mother had dreamed of gallery recognition, but he'd achieved it through honest talent rather than deception. The shop had transformed over the years. Keller's Auto Repair now occupied an entire block, with a dedicated photography studio where Kevin documented their restoration projects. Their reputation had spread beyond Portland, attracting collectors and enthusiasts from across the country. Robert entered the studio, his imposing presence unchanged by time. Success had only reinforced his natural authority. The Jensen owner called, he informed Kevin. "They want you to document the entire restoration process for their collection." "I'll set up the timeline tomorrow," Kevin replied, reviewing shots on his camera's display. "How was the meeting with the business association?" Robert's slight smile carried satisfaction. "They voted me president. Unanimous decision." He paused, studying one of Kevin's framed photographs, a masterpiece of captured in perfect detail. Maria Torres, called earlier. Kevin lowered his camera. Maria had become their most reliable source of information about the aftermath of their revenge. As a respected paralegal at Portland's largest law firm, she kept tabs on all the players in their family drama. Andrea's gallery in Seattle failed, Robert continued, his voice devoid of emotion. Third attempt in 5 years. She's working as an administrative assistant at a community college now. No more painting. Kevin nodded, remembering the night they destroyed her artistic ambitions. And Bill, working as a maintenance man at an apartment complex in Tacoma. The Parks Department blacklist was thorough. He hasn't held a government position since. Robert's expression remained impassive. They're living together in a one-bedroom apartment, still trying to convince people they were victims of circumstance. The other conspirators hadn't fared better. Daniel Torres had left Portland after losing the diner, working kitchen jobs in small towns. His children refused to speak to him. Maria had rebuilt the diner into a successful chain, her business acumen finally unleashed. Scott Matthews attempted real estate work in neighboring states, but his reputation followed him. His daughter Lisa had used her motel evidence-gathering experience to become a successful private investigator, specializing in exposing unfaithful spouses. Peter Walsh's union blacklisting had forced him into non-union construction work, living job to job. His wife had remarried, her new husband giving their children the stability Peter had sacrificed for his betrayal. Uncle Tony called, Kevin said, switching lenses. They saw Mom at Grandma Russo's funeral last month. Robert raised an eyebrow. Maria Russo had died, never reconciling with her daughter. Andrea's attempt to attend the service had met with unified family rejection. Vincent escorted her out, Kevin continued. Said she kept trying to tell everyone how therapy had changed her, how she understood her mistakes now. He paused, remembering his mother's artistic dreams. She looked old, Dad. Worn out. Nothing like the woman in my photographs. Robert moved to the studio window, overlooking their expanded business. Below, mechanics worked on luxury cars while clients consulted with staff in the professional reception area. Everything Andrea and her conspirators had tried to destroy had grown stronger in their absence. Eleanor's grandson is graduating next week, Robert said, changing the subject. She wants us to attend. Frank's widow had become family over the years, her loyalty rewarded with Robert's steadfast support. Her grandson would be starting an apprenticeship at the shop, continuing the legacy of mentorship that had shaped Robert's life. The phone rang, another call from Andrea's latest number. They received one every few months, each ignored with the same finality that had marked their revenge. Her messages played to an empty office, her pleas for forgiveness meeting digital silence. The art therapy group she's running at the community college is failing, Robert noted, reading from Maria's update. Seems her students discovered her history of plagiarism. Even teaching art basics is beyond her reach now. Kevin packed his camera equipment, preparing to photograph their latest restoration project. Remember when she said, "You never understood ambition?" Robert's laugh carried no joy. Her ambition destroyed everything she touched. Ours built something lasting. He gestured to their thriving business. The difference is integrity. Later that evening, they reviewed the day's photographs in Robert's office. The wall behind his desk displayed the building's original deed beside Kevin's first professional photography award. Success born from survival, strength forged in betrayal's fire. Lisa sent an interesting report, Robert mentioned, sorting through emails. Bill tried to open a small landscaping business. Failed when background checks revealed his history. They're living on Andrea's salary now, barely making rent. Kevin remembered his mother's dreams of artistic recognition, her plans for a prestigious gallery. Now she spent her days filing paperwork and her evenings failing to teach basic art classes. Bill had transformed from a respected city official to a handyman, dependent on his mistress's meager income. The community college is reviewing her position, Robert added. Apparently, someone anonymously sent them documentation of her past misconduct as a teacher. Their revenge continued to ripple through lives, consequences compounding over years. The betrayers had lost not just their marriages and careers, but their very identities. Each attempt to rebuild met with the silent resistance of their documented sins. A new email notification appeared, Andrea's latest attempt at contact. The subject line read, "Please, I need closure." Robert deleted it without reading, just as he'd done with every message for 5 years. In his world, betrayal didn't deserve closure. It deserved consequences, served cold and lasting. The Martinez restoration shoots start tomorrow, Kevin said, changing subjects with practiced ease. They want to feature the process in Classic Car Monthly. Robert nodded, proud of his son's success. Kevin had transformed the pain of betrayal into art, his camera capturing truth instead of lies. His photographs hung in galleries Andrea had once dreamed of approaching, his reputation built on talent rather than deception. The security system activated with its usual precision as they prepared to leave. Below, The shop's neon sign illuminated their success against the darkening sky. The betrayers had tried to claim this legacy for themselves, never understanding that true success comes from building, not destroying. They walked to their vehicles, Robert's custom pickup and Kevin's professional photography van. Father and son, bound not just by blood, but by shared victory over those who tried to destroy them. "Dad," Kevin said as they reached their cars, "I saw Mom's artist profile online. She tried to list her old works in her portfolio." Robert's expression didn't change. "Your photographs of their destruction are the only record of those paintings now. Fitting that her art only exists as evidence of her betrayal." They drove home separately. Robert to the house he'd kept, enhanced now with a professional garage for his classic car collection, Kevin to his newly purchased home in a prestigious neighborhood. Their success stood as living proof that karma, guided by patient hands, repaid all debts with interest. Andrea and Bill remained in their small Tacoma apartment, surrounded by her blank canvases and his maintenance tools. Their betrayal had purchased a life of quiet desperation, each day a reminder of the heights from which they'd fallen. The other conspirators lived similar half-lives. Daniel cooking in anonymous kitchens, Scott hustling for real estate work in ever smaller markets, Peter following construction jobs across state lines. Their children grew up hearing cautionary tales about fathers who chose betrayal over family. But in Portland, the Keller name had become synonymous with excellence. Robert's business acumen and Kevin's artistic vision had created something Andrea's manipulations could never achieve: a legacy built on truth and trust. As night fell over their expanded empire, father and son carried the satisfaction of men who not only survived betrayal, but had transformed it into triumph. Their revenge, executed with precision and documented with artistic skill, had become a masterpiece of justice served. Tomorrow would bring new projects, new successes, new victories. But for those who had betrayed them, tomorrow would dawn like every day for the past 5 years, heavy with regret and bitter with the taste of consequences. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.